I caught a round in the face. It hit me right in front of my ear, traveled through my face, took off my nose, blew out my right cheekbone, broke all the bones above my eye, vaporized my orbital floor, broke the head of my jaw, shattered my jaw to my chin, and it knocked me out. The guys saw me fall and thought I was dead. I was born in a small town in southern central Ohio. I grew up in a family that was super patriotic and from a very young age just exposed to a service-based family. Someone made the mistake of getting me a fire helmet with a light on top and a siren, and it was super loud and obnoxious, and apparently I would wear that around the house all the time. My mom told me I used to say, I'm gonna be a fireman because they're brave of heart. My dad was actually the person who told me about the SEALs because I was interested in special operations rangers and Green Berets and long-range recon patrols and SAS and SBS and any of these, special operations units around the world that I was learning about. And my dad said, well, hey, having lived in the Virgin Islands, I was a strong swimmer. And he was like, there's a group of guys in the Navy, they're strong swimmers. They do some pretty crazy stuff. Their training's tough. They're called Navy SEALs. He's like, you should check them out. I was at that age, 14, 15 years old. I was a runt. I was probably 95 pounds and 4'11". I definitely did not start to hit my growth spurt till later. So for anyone to think like this guy's going to go become, a Navy SEAL or special operations, I definitely got a lot of people who kind of laughed at me with that. But something about it just grabbed me. And it was like hardest training in the U.S. military, some of the most elite secretive missions. And I grabbed onto that about 15 years old. And I just said, that's what I'm going to do.
What was the recruitment process like? How complex, difficult, challenging is it?
I knew how hard it was going to be, or I was not surprised by how hard it was. Don't get me wrong. But I was fascinated how many people quit within the first several days. I will never forget when I was in A school before showing up to SEAL training, there was I was in the cafeteria for lunch one day, and there was a SEAL in the cafeteria. And this guy was sitting there in his uniform with his SEAL emblem on his chest, eating his lunch. And I was like giddy like a schoolgirl, it was like meeting a rock star, and I'm all excited, and I walk up to him and I'm like, hey, Petty Officer so-and-so, I'm Seaman Recruit Redman. I'm going to SEAL training too. I'm super excited. And he looked at me like I was an idiot and what do you want? And I said, well, I'm going to SEAL training. Do you have any advice? And he goes, yeah, don't quit, beat it. That really became the secret of SEAL training. Massively hard, freezing cold, always coated in sand. You were always uncomfortable, but you had to learn to function and you had to learn to drive through and operate in those conditions.
And did you ever have during that training period a moment, even a thought where you thought, I can't do this. I'm
100%.
gonna, yeah?
Yeah. For me, it happened on Thursday night of Hell Week. And Hell Week, for those that don't know, is considered to be the toughest week of training in the entire U.S. military. And it is the crucible of SEAL training. And it starts on Sunday and it goes all the way to Friday. And during that week, you will get almost no sleep. The average student might get 3 hours in the entire week. You're constantly moving. Everywhere you go, you're carrying the boat around on top of your head, which the sand and the water are grinding. It's chafing your head and grinding sores on top of your head. Your neck aches. During SEAL training, normally the bell hangs in the courtyard where everybody meets and does workouts. During Hell Week, they actually take the bell off and they put it on the back of a truck and it follows you everywhere you go. So it's always right there, oh, convenient. And a lot of guys take that option. And so for us, Thursday night of Hell Week was my toughest night. We have a saying in SEAL training, it pays to be a winner. So if your boat crew wins or you win a race, you typically get a break and you get a little reward. And our boat crew just continued to lose race after race on Thursday night. And we were at the pool, and the 11-meter dive platform was up above the pool. And they decided a good punishment for us for every race was we would have to go stand on top of the dive platform. And that night it had dropped into, it had gotten cold in San Diego. I went through in March of 1995, and there was a super strong wind blowing off the San Diego Bay, probably 35, 40 knots. And we were just standing up there in this 40-degree Fahrenheit weather, wearing nothing but these tiny little shorts, and already you'd been, you're cold and you're bleeding and you can't even think straight. And I remember standing up there just jackhammering, and the bell was parked down below on the pool deck, the truck, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. And I was like ready to quit. And a friend was like, and I started to leave. I started to leave, and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm done, man, I'm done." And he was like, "Don't do that. Don't do that. Like, this will end." And he was right. It kind of knocked some sense into me. I almost gave in to that weakness, but I pushed through, and I was like, you just got to get to the end of this evolution.
What happens from there? What do they throw at you next?
Well, I mean, literally, it's kind of at the beginning. Our pool competency training is very difficult. It takes out a lot of students. It almost took me out. What is pool competency? It's basically getting your ass kicked under the water with your scuba tanks on. You have two instructors that come down, and they're beating on you and ripping all your gear off and slamming you off the bottom. And there is a sequence of fixing your gear that has to happen in a very methodical sequence from the moment all this happens. And you're doing all this while you're holding your breath at the bottom of the pool. If you go to the surface, you fail. If you get any step out of sequence, you fail. So it's super hard because you got to have your wits about you to keep your head on straight while you're under the water and you're starting to do the I'm running out of air before you can either get your air turned back on, or they'll do things where you can't get your air turned back on. So it's just this very methodical where you have to maintain calm in an incredibly chaotic, stressful environment. And then in the third phase, you start to learn weapons and tactics and explosives and all these different things. And for the most part, once you made it through pool comp, you're most likely going to graduate. It's amazing. To know that you graduated from, one of the hardest training that exists, and to become part of this brotherhood of warriors.
What's the camaraderie and brotherhood like when you begin to work together and go on those first deployments?
It's a lot of alphas. A lot of our class ended up going to the East Coast, the majority of us. And there was a lot of us from my class that ended up going to the SEAL Team 4 with me, which was cool. I remember, shout out to Scotty Norton. Scotty had been in the Panama invasion, and he was the first guy I had met that ever was shot. He took a 7.62 round through the calf, and it left this great big wound. The exit wound just blew out the side of his calf. And Scotty was big, boisterous personality, and we all looked up to him like he was a god, like, hey, you've been in combat and you were shot. Scotty would put like guacamole in this hole in his leg and we'd like eat it with chips, or he'd put a shot in there and you'd have to drink it. And, we thought this was amazing, like, as young knuckleheads. So yeah, that was all part of the camaraderie. What's amazing, it's not really a job, it's a lifestyle. I mean, you literally live. I would be gone. We would train all across the United States and sometimes even international, because as SEALs, sea, air, and land operations, mountains, jungles, deserts, mobility, diving, urban operations. So it required us to train everywhere. So you would be gone. You would be gone as much, if not more, on the year you were training than when you actually deployed. And you would live, eat, and breathe with these guys to the point where you knew people's silhouette. You could see someone's silhouette in the night and you knew who it was. Their walk, the way they tilted their head. I mean, which are all critical things when you're talking about combat at night. Don't get me wrong, there were some guys in my platoon I couldn't stand. And I'm sure they hated me too, you know? But I knew they were capable. And I knew that if we were in a fight, they had my back and I had their back.
How did 9/11 and the beginning of the war on terror change your career and shape the rest of your time as a Navy SEAL?
In 2000, I was an instructor. I was a training instructor, and I'd done very well. I was excelling, and our training officer and our commanding officer recommended me for a commissioning program. There wasn't a whole lot going on in the world. I also had recently met my wife. We were getting married. So I was kind of at a decision point. Do I screen and go to our next tier SEAL team, or do I go become an officer? And I decided at the time, maybe it's a good time to, I had done, I think 4 deployments at that time. I'd been an instructor. I was like, maybe it's a good time and this is a good opportunity to become an officer. So I got selected for the Navy Seaman to Admiral program, one of 50 selected for this program. Me and a really good friend of mine who we had 50 out of the entire Navy. So there were 2 of us that were competing. And Bobby and I, Ramirez, were friends in the SEAL teams together. And we had only been in the program for a few months when 9/11 happened. And we were together in the student center watching on TV. And I remember looking at him saying, hey man, we're going to war.
And what was that first combat experience like for you?
I went to Afghanistan first. And this is where I kind of got myself off track. As a young leader, I had excelled so much in my career. We ended up getting this guy. He was a Taliban commander, and it was right outside Bagram base, and he had been firing rockets into the base. And they obviously a clear and present threat to anybody on the base, us, coalition forces. So we were tasked to go get him. We did a dual target takedown, and we got him. And we found IED making equipment. We found mortar, rockets, everything, red-handed. And we wrapped him up, and we brought him back to base along with several of the people that were wanted with him. And the local people were upset that we came in the night and fast roped in and breached the target, and we took this guy off target, and they followed our convoy back to the Bagram base, and you can go watch it on the news, but they tried to tear down the gates of Bagram. A huge riot broke out, and they wanted him released. Well, he happened to be friends with Karzai, and this message went up to Karzai. Karzai said, oh, he's my friend, this Taliban commander, and they let him go. They let his whole thing go. So that was kind of my first introduction to both combat and politics. Here we are, we risked our life to go get this guy that we knew we had caught red-handed, and they let him go. Morale was probably at an all-time low. I think we were all pretty depressed. And then finally we ended up getting sent down to Kandahar and operating in the Helmand province and conducting operations. And it was down there that I made a bad call on a mission. We were clearing a valley, and we had locked the valley down by ridge lines on each side of the valley, and it kind of made a T. And then, so on the northern ridge line, so we placed a group of guys on the northern ridge line. We had guys on the eastern and western ridge lines. I was on the eastern ridge line with snipers, a javelin crew, and a machine gun crew. And then we had a crew on the ground sweeping through the valley and clearing caves and stuff. It was an all-day operation. The guys got into a couple of different gunfights. We called in some air support. And then later in the day, we were getting ready to leave. We were going to pull back and extract. My boss called for reinforcements, and I made the decision in that moment, I'm going down into that valley. I told our machine gunner, we're going. Wasn't a lot of thought. It was pretty impulsive. And our chief, who he and I did not get along, was back at the headquarters element. And I called and said, I'm going down in the valley. And he was like, don't you dare go down in that valley. And this is where ego and friction and allowing personal feelings to get in the way of professional decisions, because he was right. He was 100% right. I should have listened, and I didn't. I mean, we were 1,000-foot cliffs, and we dropped down those cliffs. One, we lost communications because now we're in this, deep, deep terrain. It really is a miracle. God was watching out for us, that we did not expose ourselves to an enemy fighting force that would have killed us. But we made it all the way down to the bottom. I was going to try and make my way over to where those guys were, but now our communications came back up, and our ground force commander is like breathing fire into the radio, like, get your ass out of the valley right now. We're trying to clear an airstrike right now, and we can't do it because we don't know where you are. So we scampered, me and the machine gunner scampered back up to the northern ridge line, and they were able to clear it. But yeah, my name was Mud. I got to the top, and he just ripped me a new one. If I owned it and just said that was a bad call, you're right, it was a bad call, but I didn't. I fought against it. I was like, hey, I made the right call. I did the right thing. I went down to support the guys. And I think all of that, me doubling down, made guys go, that guy's dangerous. Let's get rid of him. They told me, we're flying you back to Bagram to meet with the commanding officer, and he's going to decide what to do with you. So that is such as a warrior and a leader, to be sent back from the front lines because you messed up and guys don't want to work with you in this very tight-knit community. I don't know if I can explain to people how devastating that was. I remember going in the room and just sitting down, and I was so destroyed that I decided that probably the best thing to do was kill myself. So the door was over here. Next to the chair was kind of like my combat cross. It's like the wooden post that you hang your gear on and helmet. And I had my gun belt on it. And I remember getting my pistol out and making sure there was a round in the chamber. And I was just like, tomorrow they're going to take your trident. That's the end of your life. Like, there's no way you can come back from this. And I put the gun in my mouth, and across the desk was a picture of my wife and kids. My son would have been 6, my oldest daughter would have been 3, and my youngest would have only been maybe 10 months old. And I had this gun in my mouth, and God was like, what are you doing? What message do you send to them if you kill yourself in Afghanistan? And I was kind of ashamed and hurt, but it kind of knocked me out of this bad decision I was about to make. And I decocked my pistol, and I went to find the Special Operations Chaplain on Bagram, who was a Green Beret chaplain assigned to the Special Operations Task Force. And I remember telling him, I just poured my guts out to him, got myself in trouble, made these mistakes. Tomorrow they're going to kick me out. He listened, and he goes, so you messed up, and tomorrow they're going to kick you out. And I said, yeah. And he goes, tomorrow. I said, yep. And he kind of pauses, writes some things down. And he goes, tomorrow at 8 a.m. And I'm like, yeah, tomorrow. Tomorrow. He goes again. I'm like, yes, tomorrow. What's wrong with you? And he's like, but you were going to kill yourself tonight. He's like, seems a little premature, doesn't it? So he was like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. He said, I don't think they're going to kick you out. So I went back to my room. I didn't sleep a wink. And the next morning I reported, and my commanding officer saved my career. And many of the guys wanted him to kick me out and take my trident. I'll be honest, I left that meeting, I should have been like, man, I'm so lucky. I didn't. I was kind of bitter still. You know, I still felt like I was kind of being thrown under the bus, and I had this victim mindset. So that was kind of the catalyst to drive forward. So yeah, fast forward, you know, came back to the team. My new boss was an amazing mentor and leader, and he basically said, hey, I don't care what happened in Afghanistan, I care about right now. We were tasked with going to Fallujah, operating in the Anbar province with our other troop going to Baghdad. Got to Iraq, and it was heavy combat. In the beginning, we were operating almost every night. Sometimes a couple of times, even twice a night. So we were doing what are called direct action capture kill missions. It was our job to go after mid-level and senior Al-Qaeda and insurgent leaders all throughout the Anbar province. And just a high-paced deployment. But as a SEAL, everything you would ever want, you know, as a SEAL operator. I mean, you were dangerous environment, going after bad people, and having success on the battlefield. We're coming up on the end of the deployment. It's September now. We got word that the #1 leader for Al-Qaeda in the Anbar province was going to be in a specific location. To make a long story short, we launched on that target, and we landed at the initial target building. Nothing was there. We thought it was going to be a quiet night, and we found IED making components and stuff like that. We were going to blow that stuff up, and then we were going to extract. But during that time, our snipers saw individuals leave a house about 150 yards away and run across the street and hide in some vegetation, which is unusual behavior, especially after helicopters come in and there's explosions and things like that. 90% of the time when we saw stuff like that, they were bad people. I took my team and we maneuvered on that house, and we walked into a very well executed ambush. Our leader had moved from the house we initially were in to that house 150 yards away. And he had an entire security detail that had set up an ambush line in that vegetation across the street. And we walked right into that ambush. Our medic, Luke, was initially hit, took a round right below the knee. They dropped him. Matt Roberts came forward, grabbed him, and they started to drag him back. And Matty was shot up, I think 2 rounds in the leg and 1 in the arm. Still managed to drag him and Luke back to this tractor tire. I was shot in the arm. It would be 2 rounds. I didn't know it at the time, but I thought my arm had been shot off. I took rounds off my gun, side plate, helmet, had my left night vision tube shot off, and decided it's a really bad place to be. I should move. And I turned to try and move back to where the guys were at the tire, and that's when I caught a round in the face. It hit me right in front of my ear, traveled through my face, took off my nose, blew out my right cheekbone, broke all the bones above my eye, vaporized my orbital floor, broke the head of my jaw, shattered my jaw to my chin, and it knocked me out. The guys saw me fall and thought I was dead. And we don't know how long. I was probably unconscious, 5 or 10 minutes. The entire gunfight would last 40 minutes or so, 40, 45 minutes. I was pinned down underneath this gunfire. Literally, this firefight's happening directly above me. And I remember at some point in the gunfight when I came to, calling out to my team lead, Jay, and I said, Jay, how long to the medevac? Because I knew I was losing all kinds of blood. And he was like, Red, you're still alive? I was like, yes. How long to the medevac? He's like, 5 minutes. It would end up being about 15 minutes, we estimate, from that time.
And what was it like when you finally came to and woke up? What was going on around you?
I'll be honest, I didn't think I was going to make it. When I was laying there bleeding out, there definitely was a moment where I thought I was gone. It was getting harder to breathe. It was getting harder to concentrate. Fast forward to the hospital when I finally passed out, and I didn't know if I was going to wake up again. So when I woke up, I was elated. I tried to talk, and just air came out. And the nurse came up and was like, Lieutenant, you're not going to be able to talk. You're wired shut from your damage. You're trached. So I said, okay, give me something to write with. And I wrote to my commanding officer. I said, hey, are the guys okay? And he said, yeah. I said, okay. Has my wife been notified? He's like, yes. I talked to her myself. And I said, okay, do I still look pretty? And they were like, no. They made fun of me. So, but trying to keep that levity as much as I could. I would be moved from Baghdad to Balad, and then medevac to Landstuhl with life-saving surgeries, all in between. I would need 8 blood transfusions from the time I got to Baghdad to by the time I got to Bethesda. And when I got to Bethesda, what originally was like, oh my God, I'm still alive, like the reality of my injuries was really starting to set in. So I remember what was elation at first really turned into just overwhelm. Like I felt like a monster. I hadn't looked at myself in a mirror. It would be, I don't know, probably at least 10 days later that I finally saw myself for the first time. I was afraid to look at myself. I was going to be disabled. I had no use of my hand, and they were talking about taking my arm. And like, hey, my special operations career is over. And I was angry. I was angry that like I had worked so hard to earn my way back after messing up, to be laying in this bed and to be broken like this. The military hospital in a time of war is a hard place to be. And all around me, there were all these young men and women who were shot up and broken. And I remember the kid right next to me in my room was not that I knew, my wife told me, was like a 19-year-old Army kid who had taken a penetrating wound to the skull. So he had massive traumatic brain injury, and he had this young wife and a new baby. And this was the hospital. So it was really overwhelming. And I'll never forget, man, we had some people who had come into my room. I think they had been there in the hospital, and they were just overwhelmed. And they started, the nurse came in, so they were talking to themselves kind of off to the side while the nurse was working on me. And I could hear them, and they were like, man, what a shame. This is so sad. So yeah, these people with this negative mindset really kind of made me say, you know what to do. And when my wife came back in the room, it was kind of the fire that basically, ignited on that moment. Like, I refused to feel sorry for myself again. Like, I'm going to drive forward. I'm going to overcome this. And I don't know what that looks like. I said, no one's allowed to come into my room like that again. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. They're not allowed to either. And I wrote out this sign. I told my wife to put it on the door. It would later get described word for word on this bright orange piece of paper that a fellow teammate took his trident off and tacked it into the bottom of the door, which someone took a picture of and sent to the national media, and it ended up going viral. It ended up earning me an invitation to the White House to meet President Bush. It's been featured in documentaries. It's been written about in books. Really, what that sign captures is the one thing that every human has. Bad things are going to happen to all of us. That's the reality. Every one of us are going to get hit by life ambushes. Every one of us are going to struggle. I mean, it's part of being human, man. There's going to be loss, and there's going to be failure, and there's going to be setbacks, and there's going to be, people are going to do terrible things to us. But the greatest gift you have as a human, your ability to lead yourself and your ability to overcome, is you have a choice. It's a choice not to ring the bell as you go through SEAL training. It's a choice to pick yourself up when you get knocked down. It's a choice to figure out how to say yes after someone tells you no. It's a choice when you're really broken to say, okay, I don't know what this is going to be like. I know it's going to suck, but I'm going to drive forward.
What is life like now at this point for you?
Yeah, for a while, my goal was to get back operational. I want to be an operational SEAL. I want to get back to that. And It would take 4 years and almost 40 surgeries to get put back together. And finally, there was a doctor at Duke University in North Carolina who was a renowned hand and arm surgeon. And he just said, listen to me. He said, you have an amazing outcome for what happened to you. You shouldn't have an arm. Your nerves are regenerating. He's like, you're not in a massive amount of pain. He's like, if you do this, it most likely will not go well. He said, think about your quality of life and your future and with your kids and all this. And I remember leaving that. I had driven down there by myself. And I remember leaving that. It was late in the day and the sun's kind of setting. And I don't know. I was disappointed, but it was just, I don't know. There was kind of this peace with it also. Like the end moment. Now it's time for a new beginning. I went back to my SEAL team that I was at the time. And I said, hey, I think I'm going to medically retire. But I want to finish. I think it was at 19 years. I want to do 20. I want my 20 years. I came in to do that, and they said, no problem. And by the time we had it all said and done, it would carry me to 21 years. I don't understand people that have been through combat, or they lose somebody and they lose themselves, and they allow grief to stop living. And they're a shell of the person they used to be. I think we owe it to the people that are gone to like be the best version of myself. I want to be the elite version of Jason Redman. I got a second chance. And so many people don't get that. So that's my journey now. I am grateful every day that I survived. I'm grateful for my family. My first grandchild is coming soon. Yep. And I am just thankful that I'm still here for that. Yeah, I got a second chance at life.
One of the things that stuck with me the most about not really taking a life, but seeing the human aspect on the backside is having to walk the family past them. And that's their dad. They feel the same way about him as I do about mine, same way you do about yours. Buddy, I didn't want to do that, dude. I didn't at all. Like, I'm a human too, but if I don't, he's gonna shoot me.